You've been on a long journey of self-discovery. You've walked through the fire of transformation, faced parts of yourself you once denied, and questioned everything you thought you knew. It's been a profound, often painful, but ultimately rewarding path. But after all the turmoil, the breakdowns and the breakthroughs, a new question starts to whisper in the back of your mind. Is it over? How do you know if you've reached the destination? How can you tell if your spiritual awakening is truly complete? If you're asking these questions, you're not alone. It's a natural part of the process. The pioneering Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung, whose work gives us one of the most profound maps of the human psyche, identified specific markers that signal a new level of integration. But these signs aren't about achieving flawless perfection or permanent bliss. Instead, they point to something far more real and sustainable: wholeness. According to Jung, the ultimate goal of our development isn't to become perfect, but to become complete. This process, which he famously termed individuation, is the journey of integrating all the separate, conflicting, and hidden parts of ourselves into a unified, authentic whole. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. In this video, we'll break down 6 definitive signs, grounded in Jung's wisdom, that show your spiritual awakening has reached a profound stage of completion, helping you understand where you are on your path and what it means to truly embody your most authentic self. Sign 1. A spontaneous shift in behavior. The first and most noticeable sign that you've reached a new stage of integration is a deep and spontaneous change in your behavior. This isn't about forcing yourself to be better through willpower or sticking to a rigid set of spiritual rules. Instead, it's a natural, almost effortless shift away from the compulsive and addictive patterns that once ran your life. Before this integration, a lot of our behavior is driven by the ego's survival tactics. We might be propelled by a sense of lack, a feeling of never being enough. Perhaps we sought validation through workaholism, soothed anxiety with mindless consumption, or managed insecurities through controlling relationships. These are the actions of a fragmented psyche, where the ego is desperately trying to patch over its own holes. However, as the individuation process deepens, the ego starts to loosen its frantic grip. It no longer operates just from fear and survival, because it's not the sole commander of your life anymore. It has begun to align with a deeper, more centered organizing principle, what Jung called the self. The self is the totality of the psyche, the archetype of wholeness, and it is inherently complete. When you start to live from this center, your actions naturally flow from a place of fullness, not lack. This shows up as a noticeable drop in reactivity. You might find that situations or people that once triggered an immediate defensive response no longer have the same power. Instead of reacting from an old wound, you find yourself responding with a new sense of calm and clarity. There's a growing kindness and authenticity in your interactions, not because you're trying to be a good person, but because that's what naturally comes from a state of inner coherence. Compulsive behaviors start to fall away on their own, not because you fought them, but because the inner void they were trying to fill just isn't there anymore. You experience a sense of okayness in the present moment, a quiet confidence that you are whole just as you are. Sign 2. A deepening of emotional well-being. The second sign is the emergence of deep and stable emotional well-being. This doesn't mean you'll never feel sadness, anger, or fear again. In fact, it's just the opposite. True emotional well-being, in a Jungian sense, isn't the absence of difficult emotions, but the ability to feel them fully without being destroyed by them. Jung spoke of the wounded feeling function, a state where our emotional life is disrupted, often by past trauma or social conditioning that taught us to suppress or judge certain feelings. In the early stages of an awakening, this can feel like overwhelming emotional turbulence. We may feel tossed around by waves of grief, rage, and anxiety. This is a necessary part of the process, as the unconscious brings long repressed material to the surface, to be healed. Reaching a new level of completion means you've learned to be with your emotions as they are, without needing to fix, deny, or immediately act on them. You no longer see negative emotions as a sign that you're unspiritual or have failed. Instead, you recognize them as vital messengers from your psyche, giving you crucial information about your needs and boundaries. You learn to sit with your pain not to escape it, but to understand it. This integration is a cornerstone of the individuation process, which requires reconciling conscious and unconscious parts of yourself. Your emotions are a primary way the unconscious communicates. By learning to listen to them with compassion, you are actively integrating their wisdom into your conscious life. This creates a profound sense of inner resilience. You're no longer afraid of what you might feel because you've developed a strong inner container to hold your emotional experiences. This emotional maturity signifies that you've begun to heal the deep splits in your psyche, allowing you to experience the full spectrum of your humanity with grace and stability. You are no longer at war with your own heart. Sign 3. A fundamental shift in priorities and values. The third powerful indicator is a radical shift in your priorities and what you value in life. This is the point where your inner moral compass becomes your primary guide, overriding the external rules and societal expectations you may have once lived by. For much of our lives, our values are shaped by our culture, family, and our desire to fit in. We chase the markers of success society hands to us: wealth, status, career achievements, and social approval. Our sense of worth is outsourced, dependent on getting a thumbs up from others. This is the realm of what Jung called the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world. While the persona is a necessary tool, we often mistake the mask for who we really are. A maturing awakening is marked by the process of divesting from this false identity. You start to realize that the things you were chasing don't hold the same appeal. Material desires and the need to impress others start to feel hollow. This isn't to say you become an ascetic, but rather that these things stop being the driving force in your life. Your motivation shifts from accumulation to authenticity. In place of these external goals, a new set of values emerges from deep within, such as truth, justice, wholeness, and simplicity. Your priority becomes living in alignment with your soul, not in service to your ego or the expectations of others. This signifies a huge psychological shift. You've located your sense of authority within the self. The ego, which once looked outward for approval, now turns inward to align with the wisdom of your own integrated psyche. This change often shows up as a growing desire for meaning over materialism. You might find yourself drawn to creative pursuits, service, or simply a quieter life. You stop asking, "What does the world want from me?" and start asking, "What is my soul calling me to do?" This internal guidance system becomes non-negotiable. You are no longer living a life designed by others, but one that is a true expression of your own whole and individuated self. Sign 4. The transformation of the inner world. The fourth sign reveals a profound reorientation. Your inner world becomes just as real and important as the external one. This marks a critical turning point where the main stage of your life moves from outward achievement to inner discovery. In our modern culture, we're often taught that reality is out there. We value action and tangible results. The inner realms of thought, dream, and imagination are often dismissed as secondary or unproductive. But for Jung, the inner world was the source of all meaning and transformation. He believed our life is a story of the self-realization of the unconscious. A completed awakening is when you consciously embrace this truth. Your dreams are no longer just random neural firings, but are seen as vital communications from the self, offering guidance and symbolic insights. You start to pay close attention to your intuition, fantasies, and the subtle movements of your psyche. This inner exploration is no longer a hobby but a central practice for living a conscious life. Jung used alchemy as a metaphor for this process. The initial breakdown of the ego is often chaotic and confusing, but afterward, the work turns to consciously engaging with the raw psychic material that has been released. You are no longer just being carried by the currents of the unconscious. You are learning to navigate them. This inner turn is marked by a new comfort with solitude. You don't fear being alone, but actively seek it as a precious chance for communion with your deeper self. In this quiet space, you can engage in what Jung called active imagination, a process of dialoguing with the figures and symbols that emerge from your unconscious. This isn't about escaping reality, but enriching it. By bringing the treasures of the inner world into conscious awareness, you integrate their energy and wisdom, becoming more whole. Sign 5. The emergence of silence and presence. The fifth sign is perhaps the most subtle, yet one of the most profound, the emergence of a deep, abiding silence and presence. This isn't an empty silence. It's a silence that is full, a quiet presence rich with peace. It is the natural state of a mind that is no longer at war with itself. For most of our lives, our minds are filled with constant chatter. This is the voice of the ego, endlessly analyzing the past, worrying about the future, and judging everything. This mental noise is a primary source of our anxiety, and it creates a barrier between us and the direct experience of reality. We don't live life, we just think about it. As the spiritual awakening process culminates, you begin to experience longer gaps between your thoughts. The relentless inner monologue starts to quiet down without you forcing it. This is a sign of what some call ego death, but in Jungian terms, it's more of a right-sizing of the ego. The ego isn't destroyed. It simply takes its proper place as a servant to the self rather than the master of your consciousness. This quieting of the mind allows for true presence to emerge. You are no longer lost in thought, but are fully here in this moment. You begin to experience life directly with a new richness. The simple act of drinking coffee or watching a sunset becomes a profound experience. There is a sense of just being that is deeply peaceful and fulfilling. This state of presence dissolves the old ego-driven striving. The constant need to do, to achieve, to become something more begins to fall away. You realize you don't need to add anything to yourself to be whole. Your wholeness is already here in the quiet space of your being. You are no longer a seeker because the search implies you are missing something. You are now simply being. Sign 6, a compassionate vision of others. The final sign that your spiritual awakening is reaching completion is the blossoming of a truly compassionate vision of others. This isn't sentimental pity. It's a profound, bone-deep recognition of the shared human journey born from the complete integration of your own inner world. In the early stages of awakening, it's common to fall into what's known as the spiritual ego. Having gained certain insights, the ego can latch onto them and create a new identity of being more awake than others. This leads to subtle judgments of those who we see as being on a lower level of consciousness. The completion of this journey dissolves that sense of spiritual superiority. This happens because you have fully confronted and begun to integrate your own shadow, the parts of yourself you once denied and projected onto others. As Jung famously suggested, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. When you have accepted your own capacity for anger, jealousy, and ignorance, you can no longer judge those same qualities in another. You see their struggles not as a character flaw, but as a reflection of the universal human condition you now know so intimately within yourself. This integration of opposites, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, is what Jung called the conjunctio, or the sacred marriage of the psyche. It is the final stage of the alchemical process, symbolizing wholeness and the unified self. From this state, you look out at the world and see not a hierarchy of spiritual achievement, but a fellowship of souls, each on their own unique and necessary path of individuation. You no longer feel the need to measure or compare journeys. Empathy replaces judgment. You see that every person is doing the best they can with the awareness they have, just as you once were. This compassionate, non-judgmental acceptance of others is the ultimate sign that you have accepted all parts of yourself. The completion of a spiritual awakening, as seen through a Jungian lens, isn't a grand, explosive finale. It's a quiet, profound, and deeply human integration. It's the spontaneous shift to more authentic behavior, the cultivation of emotional resilience, and the reorientation of your life around inner values. It's discovering a rich inner world, the emergence of a peaceful silence, and the blossoming of a compassionate heart. This journey isn't about escaping the human condition, but embodying it more fully and consciously. It's the fulfillment of what Jung believed to be life's ultimate purpose, to become the unique and complete individual you were always meant to be. The path is not about reaching perfection, but arriving at wholeness, where all parts of you are finally brought together. The journey of growth never truly ends, but these 6 signs mark the end of the war within and the beginning of a life lived from a place of deep, authentic peace. You've passed the test, not by becoming perfect, but by becoming yourself. Which of these signs resonated with you the most on your journey? We would love to hear about your experience in the comments below. Sharing our stories helps us all feel less alone on this extraordinary path. And if this exploration of Jungian wisdom was meaningful for you, please consider subscribing for more content that explores the profound journey toward the self.